Mrs. F1.
Hola, Mr. F1.
How are you doing?
I'm cold.
Very cold.
For those of you who don't know, and I feel like we might actually have a lot of new listeners from our last episode. If you didn't catch it, definitely freaking catch it. We interviewed the boys from the Red Flags podcast.
Brian and Matt.
Yeah, I can attest that they are the exact same. Like how they are on that podcast
Yes.
are how they are in real life, which
Yes.
I love. They're two of the most genuine people I've ever met, and
That's why they're so listenable, because they're
yeah,
hilarious.
they're hilarious. It was the episode was a lot of fun, so make sure to go check that out. But if you don't know who we are, I'm Brianna,
I am Matt.
and we are married, and
Yes.
we have a podcast,
See.
which can be a good thing and can be a bad thing at the same time.
Yes.
So yeah, welcome if you're new here, and if you're not, we appreciate you. Back to the reason why I said I was cold. We live in Boston. That's how this whole tangent started. We live in Boston, and it is in the negatives this week. I repeat, the temperature is in the negatives. Currently, right now, I'm looking at my phone. It's only 7 degrees, and we're almost at 1 p.m. And it's only 7 degrees, but with the wind chill, they were saying it feels like negative 30.
That's
Negative 30.
And for you Europeans out there, negative 30 Fahrenheit is basically negative 30 Celsius.
It's freezing.
So it's brutal.
It was kind of crazy because we also live on the ocean here. We're very lucky. And when I woke up this morning and looked out at the ocean, it was the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. It looked like, when you're flying in an airplane and you look at the clouds, that's what it looked like. The ocean looked like that. So anyways, that's why I'm cold. And if you're in Boston and listening to this too, freaking stay warm, stay inside. If you have to go outside, wear multiple layers.
Yes.
But
yes.
yeah, I feel like there wasn't, when it comes to quantity of news in the F1 world this week, there wasn't an insane amount.
Right.
But the news that did come out was exciting and kind of a big thing.
Yeah. 2 car launches.
Two car launches this week. The first 2 cars to launch, Haas and Red Bull. I know you wanted to talk. We were having an argument. No, not an argument.
All right, listeners.
A discussion.
You're gonna settle this debate for us.
Okay.
So I say there was only 1 car launch in the past week, Red Bull.
Okay.
Because I don't think Haas had a car launch, more so just a livery launch. Mm-hmm. And this is the debate that we're having. Basically, I think that it's not a car launch because those engineers who work on AutoCAD or whatever software they use to develop the renderings of the cars, they can make the car look whatever way they want just to mess with other teams.
Right.
So, my thought process is if I were Haas, I would be messing with the other teams, making the side pods look really weird.
You got to go back a
little suspension.
Bit.
Why?
Because for those of the people that did not watch the car launches, they might be a little confused as to why. So Haas had their car launch this week. How they did that was just releasing renderings of the car and the livery online.
Yes, thank you for giving me structure.
That's all they did, okay? Red Bull had a full-on event with pyrotechnics and a real physical car on a stage in front.
I don't know if you could call it an event. It was a haphazard meeting.
We'll get into that.
Yep.
But they actually had like a car on a stage with a live audience, and they revealed the car in person.
Yes.
So
yes.
That's
Thank
kind
you for structure.
You're welcome.
Haas didn't have that.
No.
They only had renderings.
They hit post.
Yes. Exactly. And like I was saying, if I were the Haas engineers, I would be messing with the other teams, making the car look really weird or hiding certain aspects to make them kind of, think that they had some new technology that they're hiding or something like that. And basically, Mrs. F1 and I have been in disagreements over whether or not other teams actually took Haas's car reveal
as the real car,
as an important aspect for them to research. We all know that F1 teams they hire cameramen to take pictures of cars during testing and try and study each and every team's new engineering marvels, whatever they've developed for the car that year.
Mm-hmm.
But Mrs. F1 and I disagree in that I don't think that the other F1 teams cared at all about Haas's car launch.
So let's get into this a bit. So obviously, usually when Formula One teams, and if this is your first year going through this whole car launch situation, normally the normal protocol for these is they have a big date, they have some sort of event that involves a car that is in person in front of a lot of people.
Car launch.
Yeah, Haas in the past has done this. They have done events with a physical car in front of people in the press and done a whole thing. This year...
Well, and just to be clear, that is happening, right? In the next 2 weeks?
I am unsure.
Oh, okay.
I have not looked.
Okay.
But it is interesting that Haas chose just to release renderings. They didn't release actual physical pictures. Now, the renderings can fool people. It really does look like a picture of the vehicle. Yeah. And we have to give credit to where credit's due. F1 Molly, a bunch of red flags on TikTok. She was pointing out some really interesting details she was seeing in the rendering of the car. Molly's an engineer, so found a fantastic one at that. And she was kind of breaking down some of the interesting things she was seeing. Now, Red Bull, they had their physical car on the stage, obviously for everybody to see in person with their own very eyes. And that's obviously two very different ways to launch a car and bring it out into the world. Whether the rendering or the car you saw on stage is the actual, actual bit for bit, exactly how the car we will be seeing in testing will be, it's probably not.
And that's the crux of the argument that we had pretty much, right? Is that
you're wondering if if other teams are taking a look at these cars and studying them, or if they're just taking a look at them and saying, well, it's just a car launch, it's not the real car. That's what you're saying.
I would say I'm only saying that for the Haas instance because it wasn't an actual car.
I mean, you could argue the same thing for the Red Bull.
Sure, but they would have to produce parts that are fake parts to throw off other teams, and that costs money. I don't know if that counts towards the cost cap or whatever. Maybe they're old parts. Who knows? And you could be right. If they're old parts, maybe they just throw them on there to, again, throw other teams off. But to me, it's a lot easier to mess with other teams in a program where you can literally design a car in a lot less time than physically making one. And that's why if I were other teams, I would not be looking at the Haas car in any serious way of analyzing. And I'm glad that you brought up Molly because she's the one who kind of sparked this debate where you were showing me a video of her kind of analyzing the Haas car. And that's when I said I don't think teams are really looking into it because if I were a Haas engineer, I would be messing with all the other teams just by making the car look crazy or hiding things in any other, in any way I possibly could. Whereas that seems to be much harder with an actual car.
Yeah, obviously, there's more effort. If you're looking to not show all of your cards at your car launch, you are definitely going to do certain things to conceal certain parts of your new aerodynamics or anything that you've put on the car that you don't want other teams to steal. I would not put it past any team, whether they're putting out a rendering or a real car, that they are somehow, if there's a piece of technology that they want to conceal, that they are concealing that piece of technology. Is it a lot more costly and a lot more work to do it with a physical car? Absolutely. Than it is with a rendering? Yes, absolutely. Are teams willing to do that to conceal new technology? Absolutely.
Okay.
We've seen them do this in forms of spending money on covering the car in an insane, crazy show livery when they're running it out on track. So it's very difficult to see parts of the car. We've seen Red Bull do this a couple of years back. Alfa Romeo, even though they didn't have their official car launch this week, they did launch this kind of graffiti art project car.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. But like the way that car looks with the graffiti, with how the pattern is on the car, that's the type of liveries these teams will spend money on to conceal to conceal
Right,
the
right.
design of the
It's
car.
almost like camouflage. Like, it makes
Yeah.
it, like, hard to see, yeah.
Now, to answer your question, are teams analyzing everyone's car launches and taking them seriously? Taking them seriously, probably not. Are they paying attention to them? Absolutely. I don't think, they don't want to be caught off guard just because they didn't pay attention. You could trick them just as easily by putting your actual real car out there for your car launch. And it goes both ways.
Yeah, reverse psychology almost.
Yeah. Do I think
Right.
teams are looking at these cars and going, that's the exact car we're going to see in
Right,
testing?
right.
No, but they're definitely taking note when they're seeing really big aerodynamic body design changes on that car. They're definitely taking note of it.
Okay, you might have convinced me to join your side.
Earlier,
Yes.
we were very on different sides of the fence of this argument.
But I think you make a good point. I think, like you said, it's not all or nothing either side. It's like they're paying attention, but they're also not going to lose sleep over an aspect of a car.
They take it with a grain of sand.
Grain of salt.
Salt.
You got beach on your mind.
I do have the beach on my mind.
Okay. That
So
has been solved.
yeah, that has been. I'm glad I brought you on this side of the fence on this argument. But if this is your first time going through this whole, you're new to the sport. This is your first car launch season. I really encourage you to take a look at every car that comes out. It's kind of a fun part to the beginning of the season. You never know who's going to show up with what on their car. And I really encourage you to follow Molly on F1. I believe she goes by a bunch of red flags on TikTok, and she's really great at breaking down the engineering parts of the car and really explaining it to people that aren't engineers. So highly recommend if you want to understand kind of that aspect of the car launch world, she's your girl to go to.
And one thing that we hadn't mentioned, which is kind of the whole point of this, is the actual livery of the two cars. We don't even need to talk about the Red Bull livery because it's the same livery as last year, the same livery as the year before, whatever.
Yeah.
But the Haas livery.
Haas livery looked good.
I like it.
People were comparing it, I saw on TikTok a little bit, to an IndyCar team's livery. I'm not sure what
IndyCar
team.
is the black team.
But it looked good. Like in the past,
I love it.
Haas, if you look at all the teams, Haas has probably over the past several years had the biggest change in livery almost every single year. We had the OG Haas, which is very, very similar to kind of what they just showed, going back to
A
that
little less
black
black,
and
but
red
yeah.
and white theme. Then they went with their Rich Energy sponsorship, and it went to black and gold, completely
Which,
ditched
let's be
the red.
real, that is the best livery that has ever existed in F1 history.
It was a pretty cool
it looked
livery.
epic. Too bad the car was terrible, but it looked epic.
And the sponsorship was horrible.
Yeah.
But they had that livery. Then they had the Haas Eurocali. Well, then they just had the Haas because they got ditched by Rich Energies, and it was just red. It was white, red, and blue.
Yeah. America.
Yeah, and then it was the Haas Eurocali, which it was still white, red, and blue, but reorganized to slightly look like the Russian flag.
Yes.
And then we have this livery. I like it. I think it looks really good.
I really like it. Yeah.
I'm glad they kind of went back to the black and red. It's kind of a nice change from.
And it helps that their main sponsor, MoneyGram, is a big red circle, so it makes it a little bit
Yep,
easier to.
their logo changed as well because of their partnership with MoneyGram.
Right.
So that added a little difference into some things, but it looks good.
I love it.
I'm
I think
excited to
looks
see
great.
it. Yeah, on track and
Definitely won't be the fastest, but it'll be the best looking.
We'll see what it looks like when it's moving at 200 miles an hour, maybe 150
there.
miles an hour. But I also spent a whole hour of my life wasted by watching the big to-do that was the Red Bull car launch. I have to talk about this launch because it was such a hot mess, and it was disappointing from an F1 fan perspective. It seemed unorganized. It seemed like they didn't rehearse this at all. So let's start with the hosts. The two MCs they had, two sports journalists and hosts. They've done hosting before. One is a Mexican F1 journalist, and one is a male American NASCAR journalist from ESPN, but he also covers some other sports as well. Their chemistry on stage was so incredibly awkward. She seemed like she was annoyed by him the entire time, which honestly I relate to now, because after only hearing him talk for 15 minutes, I was also annoyed by him.
We just lost all our southern U.S. listeners.
Oh, sorry. It was really bad. Like, it just was. The script was awkward. The crowd was so quiet at that launch. Like, if you would be at a car launch for one of the biggest F1 teams on the grid, you would think you would feel more energy in the room. I don't know if all of those guests were told to, like, hold your applause to the end, but, like, every time they announced something, like, dead silence in the room. Like, no one made a sound. No one clapped. No one wooed. Nothing. It sounded like the most boring event I've ever been to. And then they spent the majority of their hour of the event talking about stuff that had nothing to do with Formula One.
Right. They're like pushing other Red Bull extreme sports.
Yes. And like, that's fine. I get it. Like Red Bull, but like, read the room, Red Bull. Don't bring a Olympic snowboarder to interview to a car launch event. Like you have probably hundreds of other Red Bull athletes that are in the motorsports world in different areas. You could have brought them, and at least I would have been slightly interested in what they were saying. And they had this whole Q&A. I believe there was 4 other Red Bull athletes. None of them had to do with motorsports. And the one guy that they were interviewed was like a deer in headlights. He literally forgot what he was saying mid-sentence, and he was like, yeah, I forgot what I was going to say.
Was he a snowboarder?
Yeah, he was.
Well, he was high.
Well, it was just really awkward. And also everyone was like, I don't care about this.
Right.
Please
just show me the F1 car. That's why I'm here.
Right. So we finally get to, and, you know, we see Daniel, which is very exciting. Daniel's there. They interview him separately first before Max and Checo came out. He seemed very happy for him. He explained a bit as to like how he will be a part of Red Bull's team and what he'll be doing. And then he modeled the new kit or the new merchandise for Red Bull. So like their clothing and everything like that. It looks the same. And this was the first sign in this event where I was like, we are going to get the exact same livery. I had a little bit of hope, I have to say. I wish I didn't, but like
Naive.
I had hope for a new or a slightly different Red Bull livery, because a week or 2 ago they posted a picture of a completely blank Red Bull car with it was white and had the Red Bull logo on it in black. And I thought, okay,
that would be epic.
This could be a sign. They could be telling us like, we've stripped the car clean and we're starting over when it comes to the livery, which in my opinion, it's about time.
Psych.
The car, yeah, and I was wrong. My hopes were shattered when the pyrotechnics went up. So many fireworks that you couldn't even see the livery. So red flag number 1. And then the wall came up, and I was like, oh my God, they actually changed nothing. Nothing on that car livery has moved, budged, slightly shifted. The only difference is some of the sponsors that are on that car. I was like, come on, you're a 2-time championship winning team. Like, are you superstitious? This like we're keeping this livery because we've won with this livery.
That's a good point.
But the people want a different livery. Like, if there's one thing that's very widely known is everyone's like sick of that livery. It looked good when it first came out. We all loved it. The matte color on the car looks great, but it's time. It's time to change.
They did say that they're letting fans design all 3 American races, right? They're going to do a different livery for all 3 American races.
This is what cracked me up, is like this event I felt was also like a borderline Formula One US fan propaganda event.
Right.
It literally was like, we love America. That's why we're here. America's super valuable to us as a team, and we love it.
Right.
And they announced that for the 3 races in the United States, they're going to hold a competition that you can enter to design the livery of the car for that race, which I think is a great idea. Very cool. And each car will someone will win, and that will be the livery for the car for that race. But then in the back of my mind, I was thinking, okay, so you're too lazy to redo your own livery.
Yep.
So you're
Get it done for free.
yeah,
That's
you're
literally
gonna
what
get
I was
it
just
done
thinking.
for free.
I was like, I'm in the back of my head, I'm thinking like, man, this is smart. They can lay off all their designers and get free designs, just crowd-funded designs, and save money in the cost cap. Like,
Honestly,
come on, genius.
At this point, they're spending more money on crab legs and shrimp than they are on the look of their vehicle.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean priorities, sure.
Yes, yes.
I just think when it comes to and me as a fan and a designer, it's time to change something up. You guys have been a very successful team, so like why not? Eyes are on you at this point. Like,
But you do make a good point you said earlier about like superstition. A lot of athletes I know are massively superstitious. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's another reason why they're like,
maybe Christian Horner is really superstitious.
yeah, or Max, or
Yeah.
you know.
And there was a plethora of other things that went wrong in the event other than the all around awkward feeling of the entire event. I have to think there was so much that went wrong. Oh, they have the car come out, everybody's on stage, and they're like asking the drivers, oh, like, you know, have you spent time with the car? What are your thoughts? And Max goes, this is the first time I'm seeing it right now. And I was like, didn't know that's
I
kind
love
of
the Dutch honesty.
Yeah.
I love it.
But I was also like, that's kind of important information for the MCs to know, so they
Yeah,
don't
right.
ask a dumb question like
Right.
that.
Right.
Max also, they had a whole section asking the drivers why they think F1's gotten so big in the United States. Again, like borderline US fan propaganda. And then Max starts like spouting Netflix praises. And I was like, oh, what? I'm sorry. The real Max Verstappen must be held captive somewhere because this is not the
Right.
real Max Verstappen.
Right.
He was like, well, obviously Netflix has played a big role in F1 success in the United States. Like, not verbatim, but that's basically
Yes.
what he said. And I was like, who are you and how much are they paying you?
Right. Right. It was almost like he didn't want to be there at all. So it was like, just tell me what I need to say and I'll say it. And I need to get out of here then.
Yeah, he didn't seem super thrilled with being there. Also, a note to the American MC, stop calling everyone brother. He literally was like, come on up, like Christian Horner, it's time for him to talk. He's like, get on up here, brother. I'm like, oh my God. This is just, it was also a very blatant, and I think this is one of the first times it's been very obvious to me, is like when you see F1 events held in the F1 world, people who are used to being in that F1 world, you know, Sky Sports, those people, there is a certain level of like class that you just feel throughout the entire experience, right? Watching this event and having them be like, Danny Rick, come on up here, brother. Like, I just was like, stop. Just stop. You're making us as Americans.
So what you're saying is
It
Southern
felt-
Americans don't have class.
No.
There goes all of our Southern American listeners.
I'm just saying the event felt very American and that was very apparent. Like
Right.
the show business of F1, the etiquette of F1, it kind of was lacking and you could kind of feel that, and I don't know if that added to the awkwardness of this event, but like I just also don't think calling the CEO and team principal of Red Bull brother is
Right.
appropriate on a stage in which hundreds of thousands of people are watching. He's not your best friend. You probably literally met him 10 minutes before you just stepped on stage. And it made it feel awkward.
Yeah. Yeah.
It made it feel awkward.
I get it from Red Bull's standpoint. Yes, the sport is growing in America, but I'm guessing it's not growing hugely with Southern Americans, not South America, the continent, but Southern United
Where
States.
NASCAR is more popular.
Exactly. And maybe they think that getting a guy like that, you know, who they recognize from doing NASCAR events, you know, maybe that helps bring some of those NASCAR fans into, you know, F1. Where, and I don't understand, like, it seems like, especially the NASCAR fans that I know, it's like they think you have to be mutually a NASCAR fan or only an F1 fan. It's like, well, why can't you like all forms of racing?
Mm-hmm.
And I think now that F1 is growing in America, I don't think it's growing hugely in that demographic. So I could see why Red Bull's maybe kind of going after that demographic.
I'm just saying F1 has this feeling, this feeling of, yeah, I guess you could say like a high class event.
Of course.
That it just has this thing about this air about it. And I think that's why a lot of people are attracted to it. And when you think of Formula One, you think of people driving in elegant cars, dressed elegantly, drinking champagne, like
Right.
and
Monaco.
and like even when you're there, like on the grounds, like when we were there at our first race, like you still kind of feel that excitement and that level, that high level of class and entertainment in a lot of different spaces. And I don't know.
It's interesting that you said that, because I agree with everything you said up until that. I felt that at the Grand Prix that we went to, it felt less classy than I expected it to be. And maybe that's because we sat in the peasant seats.
We sat in a grandstand.
I know you. I mean,
one of the,
well,
not the main grandstand on the straight, but we sat on a very
turns
popular
8 and 9, I
turn.
think.
Yeah.
But again, we weren't the VIP $20,000 a day ticket, whatever that is. And I'm sure if you had that ticket, then it's all class, right?
Right.
But for me, getting there at 8 in the morning, them bumping house music and selling Heineken at 8 a.m. and like, I was like, I actually see a lot of similarities between NASCAR and F1, like now that I'm here.
And you know what's kind of funny is NASCAR probably has all of those things, like the suites with champagne and like people dressed
Absolutely.
in outfits that are worth more than my entire life. Like they probably have that, but that is not what's associated with the sport. And it was just interesting to see, like, Red Bull made it very apparent. They wanted to launch a car in New York because America is a big market. It's important to them. They value American fans. That was very much the message, loud and clear at that event. And I mean, it was smart for them to hire an MC from the United States, but then also an MC from Mexico, because obviously
smart.
they have Checo as their driver, representation there, and a woman, which was very exciting to see as well. But I mean, it just felt different. It almost, and I feel like it just could have been done better. The melding of the F1 world and the American culture, I think they just like forced it in this instance, and it didn't feel like it meshed. It felt awkward, and it was just, overall, I feel like the event was very poor. I hate to say it, but I think it was, it seemed like they hadn't practiced anything. They didn't know what was going on. Toward the end of the event, they were like, and we have the F1, head of F1 here, Stefano, come on up. And then they're like looking around, where's Stefano? Like, oh, where are you, Stefano? Look, they're making jokes. And they're like, oh, there he is. I see him. He's coming. Well, in the meantime, let's just chat until he gets here. And then they start filling some time. And then they announce, in fact, actually, he's not there and he won't be coming. And I'm thinking, that is something so important.
Yeah. You
Like,
can't mess that up.
No, and there were so many chances in which, like, that's one of those things where you run up on stage and whisper in the MC's ear, because that's kind of embarrassing. And it didn't look great on them. It didn't look great on Red Bull. It again created this awkward situation on stage. Yeah, the event was really poor. But the one good thing about the event, and one thing that they announced that I think was the reason you should have watched, Ford and Red Bull. They are officially teaming up as powertrain partners.
Ford's back.
Yeah, for 2026.
Yeah.
This is really exciting and also very full circle, because Red Bull, so Ford hasn't been involved in F1 for 21 years.
I think Cosworth was a team in like 2012 or something.
20 years it's been since Ford has been in Formula One. And it's full circle because Ford exited Formula One because they sold their team, Jaguar, to none other than Red Bull.
Interesting.
So now they're coming back with the team they sold. And this is really interesting. Obviously, they're coming on as some sort of big sponsor. Obviously, we'll see the Ford logo, I'm sure, prominently displayed.
Are they coming on as an engine producer? I would
They are
think so.
coming on as a technical partner, in which Christian Horner said it. They will be helping develop the engine, which will be Red Bull's first powertrain engine they're producing on their own, that will be used in both the Red Bull and the AlphaTauri for 2026.
Gotcha.
Red Bull basically was like, they're going to help us, we're going to help them. It's a very mutual relationship. I found it interesting too, because if you remember months and months ago, there were huge rumors that Porsche and Red Bull were going to do this partnership for the powertrain, and that never happened. It sounded like they just were not able to come to an agreement with each other.
Right.
So now Ford has stepped in and seized the day, that opportunity.
I'll tell you what, I would go over a German engine producer than I would definitely pick a German engine producer over an American one.
Absolutely.
God only knows. I mean, we make cars go fast in a straight line, and that's about it. So I don't know why. Maybe Porsche wanted too much money, too much, control over the team, whatever. But I think that's kind of a step down, in my opinion, to go from Porsche to Ford.
Yeah, I think so too, because obviously Porsche is known for making fast cars. That's literally all they do. Where Ford, they've got a couple cars in their catalog that go fast. And obviously Ford is doing a really big EV push. And the CEO of Ford did say, like, we will learn more about how we can make our cars better and more efficient when it comes to that by working with Red Bull.
Yeah. Turbo hybrid, right?
For the turbo hybrid era.
Yeah.
That will begin in 2026. Yeah. So that was a big announcement. It was big leaked news. Kind of like the day before by the Italian media. God bless the Tifosi reporters. But yeah, that was the most exciting thing that happened in that entire event. The livery is the same.
Yep. And it was a terrible event. And honestly, I've seen a couple of these events before. I didn't watch the Red Bull one because I've seen a few of them before, and they have been, like, cringeworthy, just not very, listening to Mattia speak English, which, it's just not his first language. He's an awkward dude. And I figured that was going to be all of the...
Yeah, but Fred Vasseur is, I feel like, a little less awkward.
Well, we'll see at the Ferrari launch, but I'm pretty sure it'll be just as cringe as all the other ones. Because they're all awkward people. They're all nerds and really smart and drive fast cars for a living, and they can't talk into a microphone.
Yeah, I mean, there's no car launch where I've been like, I would watch that on repeat.
Yeah, right.
But it could have been done better. And Red Bull, like, you spent all that money to come to New York, you hyped it up, and then you put on a show like that?
Yeah.
Ugh. I mean, incredibly painful for a fan. There were a lot of F1 creators there, though, and a lot of female F1 creators. So that was good to see.
Yeah.
That made me really happy to see. People
send us an invite. What the hell?
We do not have a big enough audience. We got to grow this podcast a little more to get a wink
Give us
from
more
Red Bull,
so we can go to the Red Bull event in New York and laugh at their cringeworthy performance.
Isn't it kind of funny though when you look at these, first two car launches of the year, very exciting for a lot of fans, the vast difference. Haas was like, post.
Yeah. Twitter.
Here's
Boom.
the car.
4 pictures.
Red Bull's like we're going to have an hour event. Yeah. We're not going to talk about the car or anything to do with the car until the last 15 minutes.
We'll interview snowboarders.
We're going to interview a snowboarder who completely forgets his train of thought. And then we're going to do it horribly, by the way. And then we're going to light the stage on fire with pyrotechnics and show you the exact same car that you saw last year.
So what you're saying is Haas 1, Red Bull 0, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
For so many different reasons.
Yes.
Oh, another announcement that was brought this week that wasn't a car, but it does involve F1. It does involve cars. F1 Academy had its official kind of PR launch to the world. They showed the logo. It looks very cool. I actually do like the logo a lot. They're going with like blue, purple colors. And the Academy, the word Academy kind of looks like a track almost,
cool.
Which is very cool. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. and they started their page. They have announced 2 drivers that will be joining them. One is a W Series driver. She was a rookie last year.
Okay.
Bianca Bustamante, which
That's a fantastic name.
yeah, it's a great name. I might have butchered it. First of all, I'm just gonna preface, I'm an American.
We don't say names well.
Yeah, I may pronounce some names in a way that you are not used to hearing them.
Right.
And if you have a problem with that, don't listen to the show. Yes, I've had a lot of people saying that. They're like, "You said it wrong," and I'm like, "No, I said it like an American."
Yeah. Which is probably wrong, but we don't care.
Yeah, if I ask you to say my name, you're
Right.
probably gonna say it incorrectly, and it doesn't have to.
Just stop getting offended.
Yeah.
It's that easy.
Okay, I'm done with my little side run there. But yeah, Bianca Bustamante, she is a younger driver, which is very exciting. We're seeing some young talent being brought into the space. And then Lena Buller,
Buller. German. Sounds like it.
I believe so. She is also going to be driving in the academy with Art Grand Prix.
ART. Nice.
Yep,
Cool.
and then Bianca will be driving for Prima. So it's really interesting. They're slowly kind of showing their roster they're going to have here. I think Bianca is a really good choice. She showed a lot of promise. And yeah, I mean, I also love how they're being very intentional with showing how they're planning to get these girls to Formula One.
Mm-hmm.
There is a plan. There is a road, which I think is what W Series was lacking. There kind of was no road. It was like, we're doing this to get you noticed.
Right.
And we're not really sure what we're going to do after that. So really exciting to see. And I'm just very curious to see how this whole thing's going to play out.
Me too. And I know we've talked about it before, but it's just really bothersome to me how F1 just abandoned W Series to create their own thing. Mm-hmm. At least we have 2 series, and, you know, here's to hoping that W Series can stay stable and we can get a full season of racing. But I just don't understand why F1 didn't back W Series and then just created their own thing. But
Yeah.
hopefully both of them can do their own thing, they can succeed, and we have more racing to watch, and that's all the fans want.
Yeah,
You know?
and it kind of is making things a little bit more clear. I remember back in an episode we were discussing like why these W Series athletes, these drivers, these women, this is supposed to be this like jumping off point for them to get into other series, but yet their access to the F1 grid, other teams, seemed very restricted.
Right,
Unless you partnered with a certain brand or team where you allowed in that paddock. Now it's kind of making sense.
Right. At least yeah, exactly.
Yeah, F1 had plans to do something, and that's why they were keeping it very separate.
Right.
Because what would make F1 Academy special if W Series had the same access as them?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
In that same vein, you and I were watching the Formula E race in Saudi Arabia
Oh,
this
yes.
past week.
Very cool race.
It was an excellent race. Those cars look epic. They are so unbelievably fast. Great racing. Jake Hughes, an F2 driver who's signed with McLaren's Formula E team, he's having a phenomenal year.
Yeah, really great.
He struggled a bit in F2, but he's looking great now, and I'm really psyched to see if this can kind of be a step forward for him. But like I said, in the same vein, you know, talking about F1 Academy, we saw the first Saudi Arabian woman drive a Formula E car at the Formula E race in Saudi Arabia.
Yes,
It was a really awesome story, and she was ripping it around the track, and that's stuff that I really like to see, especially in cultures where that might be frowned upon. Just letting women drive these cars, letting more women be exposed to motorsport, and that's going to grow, you know, F1 Academy, W Series, all those series.
Yeah.
It's great to see.
She wasn't racing in the race, but
no.
she had like kind of like a test drive with one of the Formula E cars.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
that was
agree.
cool.
Very cool to see for women getting involved in that form of racing as well, and also women
Mm-hmm.
from countries where they don't unfortunately have a lot of freedoms. So really great to see. And how Formula E is also trying to progress, you know, females in the sport as
Mm-hmm.
well. They also had the coolest drone show I've ever seen
Oh
in my
gosh, it was
entire life.
epic.
It was so cool.
wild.
If that doesn't happen at a Formula One race this year, I'm gonna be sad.
It makes me sad that we don't do that in the U.S. yet. I've only ever seen it in like Dubai, maybe in China. yeah, like those very wealthy Middle Eastern countries. We should be doing that at Miami and at Vegas. I mean, at Vegas at night with the race going around
that would look so cool.
The strip, it would be epic.
Maybe we will see it in Vegas, actually. Now
We better see it in Vegas.
When Vegas does anything, it is a full-on show.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe we'll see a drone show.
Let's hope so.
Speaking of Saudi Arabian money, this is a great segue into this. I know we didn't get to talk any F1 news last week because of the interview we had, but I want to talk about this now because I think it's really important. It was leaked by Bloomberg that there was a bid put out to buy Formula One by the Saudi Arabian prince government. They're all the same. They're one and the same. They wanted to buy, and they put out a bid to buy Formula One for $20 billion.
Yep.
$20 billion.
That's with a B.
That's a lot of money, and also a completely outrageous amount. It's not worth that much. Or the access that they would be getting, it's not worth that much. It's definitely it was like here's a ton of money, give it to us type of move.
Right.
F1 obviously turned that down, but it was put out on the table for them to consider. The president of the FIA has been very vocal on his personal Twitter about his views on this, saying that that's just an absurd amount of money and a gross overvaluation, and basically said it would cause other issues if that were to ever go through. And then F1 was like, excuse me, but last time I checked, you can't tell us what to do, so butt out. Basically, it's very public dispute going on Twitter.
The past month has been tough for the F1 FIA kind of, relationship. It seems like Mohammed
Ben Salam,
Salam, seems like he is, very open to adding new teams, even though, again, he's FIA, not F1.
Yeah, he wants to see the growth of the sport.
Right, exactly. And, also kind of surprisingly doesn't want Middle Eastern money buying the sport. And
he was very vocal about the whole Andretti thing, very publicly vocal about how he's unhappy with how F1 teams don't want Andretti.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm shocked at this. And, I am kind of on his side. I agree with most of the points that he's been making recently. I think now is the time to grow the sport with the exponential growth of viewership. But for some reason, it's almost like the old man's club that doesn't want to change.
Yeah, and it's just really interesting to me too, because this comes just a month practically after the FIA announced that they would be enforcing this rule, basically of free speech for these drivers, that if they could not make any political or religious statements without the approval of the FIA, and if so, they would suffer some sort of punishment fine situation. But then we have the head of the FIA out here spouting his personal opinions all over Twitter, and it's just like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. That's not how this works. If you're telling the drivers that they have to keep their mouths shut with their personal opinions, then guess what? You also need to follow the same rules.
Freedom for me, not for thee.
Yeah,
right?
and I saw Valtteri Bottas put out this week saying he thinks it's pretty much ridiculous that we're grown men. We should be able to make our own decisions.
Of course.
And it's just, it's just really interesting. And then, of course, it came out too that the president of the FIA, Mohammed, in an interview 20 years ago, basically said he doesn't like women that think they're smarter than men.
Right.
Yikes. Yeah, if you're going to spout your opinion all over the internet, you better believe people are about to dig into your past and find some probably not great stuff about you. But like we were discussing when this came out, it was 20 years ago. I really do. People evolve, people change. That is possible. I really do hope that that is not his view now. If it is, yikes.
Right.
But I mean, from all the other things I've seen him promote and share, it doesn't seem that way. So,
Right.
again, 20 years ago, it's a long time ago. The world was a different place also 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yep.
So, hopefully
what he
that's not
said
the
was
case.
indefensible, but like you said, it's 20 years ago, and let's just hope that, his views have changed being exposed to the Western world where that's not really acceptable.
Yeah.
And like I said, recently I've been on his side with a lot of the F1 talking points. Obviously not on that, but on the F1
When it comes to the
talking points.
growth of the sport.
When it comes to the growth of the sport, I think he's a smart guy. I think he knows what he's talking about, and I think he is pushing the right buttons because, unfortunately, some of these F1 teams are more concerned with the short-term money that they'll make by not adding an 11th team.
Yeah.
And, they're just too concerned with the short-term money to not see the long-term growth by adding an 11th or 12th team, whatever it is.
Yeah, they're being selfish,
Yeah.
basically.
Yep, of course.
But yeah, that's just the kind of like political drama that's been going on recently. I found it interesting, upsetting, and also just, it's just kind of interesting to see when like the curtains pulled back, some of the things you're seeing going on behind the scenes. So yeah, I think that's it.
I think that's it for this week. It was other than 2 car launches, pretty thin week.
Yeah, next car launch to come up will be Williams. That's the next one. I've heard rumors that Gulf and Williams will be partnering up.
Gulf, Gulf, the gas stove.
Yes.
Wait, I thought they were associated with McLaren. The Gulf livery that they did in McLaren.
I thought so too, but
Monaco?
like I don't know if that sponsorship is continuing with McLaren.
Interesting.
But that could be interesting and also could make for a really interesting livery.
Definitely. The Gulf livery of the McLaren was epic. That was one of the best I've seen in recent years.
What car launch are you most looking forward to that we have, obviously, besides Red Bull and Haas that have already happened?
I would say I'm pretty excited for Williams because I'm a biased Logan Sargent American fan, right? But, again, what we talked about before, like, I don't really know. I don't put a ton of weight into these car launches. I'm excited to see the liveries because I love seeing the new
That's more
cars.
what I'm asking.
Okay.
Like,
What car do I think will look the coolest?
What car are you most excited to see for like multiple reasons? But let's
The Williams livery last year was cool. Was really cool.
It was a good livery.
It's
yeah.
my dad's favorite livery, and that one I'm excited to see. Mercedes always has a great livery.
Will they go back to silver? Who knows?
They were already silver last year. Remember?
Were they?
Yeah, they went from black to silver last year.
Why did I? Well, will they go back to black? Who knows?
I think they look better in black, but they're known as the Silver Arrows, so probably stick with silver. Alfa Romeo always has like these crazy one-off liveries. Remember that like black and white camo Alfa Romeo? They were like 2 years ago.
That was basically to camouflage changes to the car.
Yeah, but like that, I would love to see that stuff. And probably one of the Italian teams will do that. Not Ferrari because they're dumb, but Alfa Romeo I could see.
Alfa Romeo already did with the art car.
Yeah, exactly. That
They're
graffiti car.
Italian
Yeah,
team.
exactly. Yeah. See, that's the stuff I love. But, as for the actual car releases, I don't know enough about engineering to be able to tell what the difference is. That's why I like F1 Molly, kind of running through that stuff. But really, we don't know how good these cars are going to be until testing and until the first race of the year. So it's just a pretty car to look at.
This is where you see the difference between Matt and I's train of thought. I ask him what car he's most excited to see, and his train of thought goes to the technical side immediately.
Yes.
Like, he didn't think about, what car livery am I most excited to see, which is where my brain goes.
Right.
But you were like, I don't really put any attention into I don't take any of these engineering marvels into consideration. And I'm like, no, like the car, like what's it going to look like? That's what I'm asking you.
Okay. So...
This is
car
how
pretty.
Our minds work. I would have to say, obviously, I'm excited for Ferrari. The car's going to be red.
It's going to be the same car.
Fred Vasseur cracked me up the other week when
Yeah.
he was being interviewed, and they were like, could you give us any updates on the car? What could be changing? And he goes, I'll not give you a secret, but the car will be red. with this
love
like evil smirk on his face. I loved it.
I do love that.
Yeah.
Mattia would never make that joke.
No, he wouldn't. So I'm excited to see Ferrari just because they're my team.
It's gonna look like the same as all their other cars.
But
Boring. Boring.
I said what I'm most excited for. This is what I'm saying. And then I am excited to see McLaren because I really have liked their liveries in the past. I'll be interested to see if they mix it up a little bit more this year. But I have always loved the livery for that car. So I'm excited to see that too. And I always feel like they do a pretty good job with the car launch when it comes to like the showmanship of it all.
And AlphaTauri tends to have a pretty different looking car, right?
Yeah, but the past couple of years they've kind of kept status quo with the white and the blue.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see. I mean, it could change things up. Seeing that their sister team changed nothing up, I'm gonna say their car will probably look the exact same.
What about Aston? We haven't talked about Aston. Do you think they're gonna stick with their Aston green?
Yeah, I think they are.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna see pretty much a similar car there. Maybe they'll add some more of that neon yellow green. That could be cool.
I do like.
I
that,
really do like the look of that car also. But we'll see.
bad
But
it's a
I'm kind
crappy
of
car.
expecting them to come back with something the same. So we will see though. Only time will tell.
Yes.
Williams is next. Excited for that one. Like always, everyone, make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Next week, we have another interview coming with somebody who is a F1 journalist. So get ready for that. It's going to be exciting. I'm really excited to talk to her. And like I said, if you didn't listen to our last week's interview, make sure to check it out and make sure to go follow the guys at the Red Flags podcast. They did announce they're doing a live show in New York.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Nice.
So if you want to go check that out,
Maybe we should head down there.
maybe. But yeah, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We also love to see a preferably 5-star review from you.
Even if you don't like us, 5-star. Don't
And
care.
make sure to follow us on all social media at Mr. and Mrs. F1 Pod. You can also watch this podcast on YouTube if you want to just watch us and listen to us instead of just listen to us. But until next time, we will see you later.
See ya, brother.